Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we've got an incredibly deep dive ahead of us. We're going to explore a really radical spiritual philosophy drawn from a text called Breaking Through Form, Advanced Practice. Now listen, this isn't your everyday self-help guide. Not even close. This source text literally demands that its practitioners shed absolutely every rule, structure, and moral code we know, all to achieve an ultimate state of freedom. So get ready, because we are looking at a complete deconstruction of reality as we know it.
I want you to just imagine for a second, stripping away every single familiar construct in your life. What if ultimate freedom actually meant erasing all laws, morals, time, and, get this, even your own identity? It's a lot to wrap your head around, right? But this is a shocking premise that anchors the source text we're breaking down today. The author proposes that the very things we rely on to navigate our lives, the things that keep us safe, are actually the exact things keeping us trapped.
Okay, let's dive right in. To help us grasp these abstract and frankly radical concepts, the author uses a really accessible metaphor. Spinning oneself into a cocoon and then breaking out is a metaphor for spiritual practice. We're going to use this image of the cocoon as our guide through the whole philosophy today. The text argues that the structures in our lives, they start out as protective cocoons, but eventually, to reach our true potential, those exact same cocoons become constraints that we literally have to shatter.
The text actually maps this journey out into 3 distinct stages. First up, we've got elementary practice. This is spinning the cocoon. It gives you the necessary protection when you're just starting to learn the ropes. Next is intermediate practice, which is all about nurturing new life within that safe space. But here is where the text takes a really sharp turn. Advanced practice, which is the ultimate goal here, is about breaking out of the cocoon entirely to achieve true spiritual transcendence. The whole philosophy insists that all forms, all rules, they're just cocoons. You use them at first, sure, but to truly master the practice, you've got to break right through them. Which brings us to Section 1, Erasing the Rules, Stripping Away Reality.
So we're now entering that radical advanced phase where the true journey of unlearning really kicks off. And wow, the author does not hold back here. You're instructed to forget laws, regulations, moral standards, the whole shebang. But it goes way deeper than just government or laws. You have to erase ties to your religion, your political party, and, well, this might be a tough one to explain at Thanksgiving. Even your family, spouse, and friends. According to this practice, holding on to these ties just keeps you trapped in the cocoon.
And if you thought earthly rules were a lot to let go of, buckle up, because the text escalates this straight to the cosmic level. The author writes that the universe itself must also cease to exist. Time is gone, space is gone, the material world has totally disappeared, and even you are gone. The text explicitly states that traditional virtues, things like benevolence, righteousness, wisdom, trust, they're just no longer needed. The goal is a total, complete dissolution of reality until only the concept of the greatest creator remains in your heart.
Now, to explain the logic behind all this massive unlearning, the text uses a surprisingly simple homework analogy. Think of a student and a teacher. A teacher assigns homework to the students, right? And the students absolutely must complete it. But the teacher? They don't do the homework because they've already done it. They've totally moved past that requirement. So the author argues that an advanced practitioner discards rules instead of blindly following them because they have to strive to become the teacher who just no longer needs the homework.
The text keeps building on this by looking at a master and a disciple. Basically, a master gives disciples a series of requirements, precepts, discipline, practice approaches, you get the idea. And the disciple is strictly bound by them. But the master is no longer bound by those rules at all because they've completely transcended them. So the text lays out this really provocative goal for the practitioner. We shouldn't just be striving to be a good disciple. No, we must become the master of the master.
Moving on to Section 2, The Trap of Forms, Sesame Seeds versus Watermelons.
The narrative shifts here to our everyday practices, which the text labels as limiting forms. The crucial point is captured in this really fun contrast. Practice is meant to achieve a perfect life structure. That's the watermelon. If a practitioner focuses solely on rigid forms, like sitting perfectly in meditation, reciting exact mantras, obsessing over breathing techniques, they're basically running around picking up tiny sesame seeds while completely ignoring the giant watermelon sitting right in front of them. It's a profound warning, really, that focusing too much on the how can entirely distract you from the why.
And this idea of purpose over form, it applies to mundane everyday life too. The author takes a really firm stance that the whole purpose of wearing clothes and eating is simply to sustain the physical body.
Being hyper-meticulous about your appearance or sticking to rigid diets, that's just wasting effort on trivial forms. Even more provocatively, the text states that the ultimate purpose of affectionate and sexual love is just to experience happiness. If you insist on exploring all these reasons and rigid methods, you fall into a trap, which the author actually calls the trap of marriage. The text asks point blank, can one not enjoy love and happiness without the rigid form of marriage?
To really hammer this point home, the source text launches into a rapid-fire sequence of questions challenging exactly how we express love, respect, and duty. Let's look at a few, starting with this one. Is keeping a canary in a golden cage the only way to show affection for the bird? The implication here is super clear. Our attempts to formalize love often just end up imprisoning the exact thing we care about.
Here's the next question they hit us with. Is attending church the only way to be a Christian? Again, the author is challenging traditional religious structures, basically suggesting that the building itself and the weekly rituals are just cocoons. They might protect you initially, sure, but they aren't the ultimate truth of the faith.
Then the text asked, is a woman considered a proper lady only if she has bound feet? This is a really stark historical example of a societal expectation acting as a literal, physical, and painful binding form. It sharply illustrates just how destructive clinging to these forms can actually be for us.
And finally, is placing scriptures on one's head the only way to show respect for saints? The text ultimately concludes that all of these forms, whether they're religious rituals, societal norms, historical traditions, they're meant to constrain ordinary people, but they're completely inappropriate for true seekers of the Tao. Because once you're trapped by these forms, you are totally bound by them.
And this illustrates the core paradox of the entire philosophy, summarized perfectly in this profound quote. Dharma sets no rules. No dharma is dharma. Form has no set shape. Non-form is form. Sounds a bit like a riddle, right? But what it really means is that true freedom requires breaking free from the constraints of forms entirely. Only by reaching a state of non-form can you move freely and act genuinely in accordance with your own intrinsic nature without needing a rulebook telling you how to behave.
Okay, let's get into Section 3, the supercelestial being, formless thinking.
We are now entering the final stage of the text, looking at the ultimate spiritual state. To break out of that final cocoon we've been talking about, the text states the practitioner has to engage in an aggressive unlearning process. I mean, you must actively discard all scriptures, completely reject the teachings of masters, step on guides, and treat all worldly regulations and rules as utterly worthless. It is a total rebellion against any external authority that tries to impose a form on your spiritual journey.
When you achieve this ultimate rejection of form, the text promises that a completely new world will reveal itself. You enter this major cognitive shift defined as holographic thinking or formless thinking. This is a state achieved strictly by breaking free from all constraints. And according to the author, it is only from this unconstrained holographic perspective that a practitioner is finally able to see the greatest creator clearly.
And that leads us to the ultimate end state described in the source. Becoming a supercelestial being. A supercelestial being is someone who roams completely freely. Because they've discarded all artificial rules, they act purely from their intrinsic nature. The text claims that only by reaching this exact state can a person truly distinguish truth, goodness, and beauty from falsehood, wickedness, and ugliness. It's pitched as the key to making significant contributions to humanity and understanding the full meaning of what the author calls Lifechanyuan, their grand vision for the ultimate ideal state of human existence.
So as we wrap up this explainer on a truly radical spiritual framework, I really want to leave you with a challenge based directly on the text's core metaphor. Think about the cocoons in your own life for a second, the routines, the expectations, the rules you follow without even questioning them. If you discarded every single rule, expectation, and form in your life right now, what would actually remain? Would you find absolute chaos, or would you find the ultimate freedom of the supercelestial being? It's definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me today to unpack these seriously challenging concepts. Keep questioning your forms, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.